For the next 30 minutes, we will explore the unexplained. From mysteries beyond our galaxy to ghostly phenomena in our own backyard, we will dive into our psychic abilities and explore everything from conspiracies to the just plain weird. Welcome to 30-odd minutes. If the truth is out there, we will find it. But only by sheer accident.
Thank you very much. Welcome to 30-odd minutes. I'm Jeff Belanger. We are Oddballs, and we don't think any less of you for watching a show like this. So welcome back. It's good to have you here. Excited about tonight. We're going to be talking about UFOs, which is why we're broadcasting here live from the mothership, as you can see behind me, high above the Earth and space. Ooh, yes, we are. Want to remind you, if you're watching the show live online at 30oddminutes.com, jump into our chat room because Sarah and Rob are eagerly waiting for you to go in, say hi, ask your questions. You can pass them up to me and the guest, and this is about you, so feel free to ask away. Now, we know you like your paranormal in small doses. That's why you're watching us, and we know you don't have a lot of time. Neither do we, quite frankly. So that's why when we get access to, did you see that? Did you just see that? I just saw something. Whoa, I just saw something. When we get access to some of the best names in paranormal research, sometimes we only have the chance to ask one question.
One question interview.
We're here with Grant Wilson, one of the stars of the hit sci-fi show Ghost Hunters. Grant Wilson, have you ever done a one-question interview before? No. Thanks.
Informative, riveting. Thanks, Grant. Appreciate that. All right, we did get emails this week. Thank you. We keep those emails coming. info@30oddminutes.com. Send us your complaints, your junk mail, your Nigerian money scams. We want to hear all that. Greetings. I'd like to suggest that you guys do a show on Satanism. Kind of dark and scary. Is that you, Satan? I'm not talking about the play type of Satanism espoused by the infamous Church of Satan, but rather true old bloodline Satanism that most people know as devil worship. This type of Satanism is called theistic Satanism and is attracting a growing interest around the world. Sincerely, Dark Ember. Dark, thank you for your email. We appreciate that. We'll keep your request in mind. You never know. Do we want to go religious? I mean, we've always kind of... Cults, religion. Well, you know, what's the difference between a cult and a religion? I say numbers. You know? 12 of you in the woods, it's a cult. A couple million of you, it's a religion. Right on. All right, but we're here tonight to talk about UFOs. And in fact, we're going to talk about one of the most profound UFO cases ever. So well documented, which is why we know so much about it. And we've got the perfect guest to talk about it. First, let me set the historical stage. It's December of 1980. And the world is really on the brink of World War III, potentially, because Russia is lining up troops with Poland. Tensions are high. If Poland is invaded, many other countries have vowed to come to the rescue and could easily launch World War III. Go over to England, where we've got U.S. Air Force bases, of course, British Air Force bases. Everybody's on edge because tensions are high in the world. Larry Warren was a member of the Air Force Security Police stationed at RAF Bentwaters. It's a NATO base in Great Britain, just a little bit north of London. We'll show you a map in a minute. And he was asked to investigate a disturbance that took place in Rendlesham Forest, and about 5 miles away from the base. He went and had an experience that changed his life and is going to be pretty much the focus of our interview here tonight. Has connections even our own Matt Moniz is going to be talking about. And we've got just the right guest. Tonight, Peter Robbins. He's one of the most respected investigators, writers, and public speakers on the subject of UFOs. He has more than 30 years of experience as a researcher, investigator, writer, lecturer, activist, and author. That's a lot of stuff. He's a regular guest on radio shows around the country. He's appeared or been a consultant on numerous television shows and documentaries. He's the co-author of the British bestseller, Left at Eastgate, a first-hand account of the Rendlesham Forest UFO Incident, its cover-up and investigation. You've seen him on the History Channel, National Geographic, the Sci-Fi Channel, Lifetime, the O'Reilly Factor. Tonight, he's all yours, joining us live from upstate New York. Please put your hands together for Peter Robbins.
Yay!
Peter, welcome.
Thanks, Jeff.
How are you?
Well, yourself?
I'm good, thanks. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for talking about this. And this book, look at it. I'm not even going to show the cover. Look at how thick that is. This week I've been hammering in nails with this sucker. That's
You're not the first.
That's substantial. This is a substantial book. What a document this is. I mean, seriously. First published, 9 years ago? Was that?
First published in 1997, republished 4 years ago.
4 years ago. Okay, so 1997, and you've added a lot. This is Left at Eastgate, of course. We're going to be talking about this case tonight. Incredible stuff. Can you just set up for us? We'll talk about the 3 days in and around Christmas of 1980. What's going on in England?
Well, the bases, all NATO bases, are on very high security alerts because of this potential incursion to Poland by the Soviets, all being stirred up by Lech Walesa, the first president of Poland. But over this course of 3 nights, UFOs were in the skies over this highly secured twin NATO base in Suffolk, England, about 70, 80 miles from London. And everything from landings to unknowns coming in over the nuclear weapons storage area to the touchdown of a fully fledged articulated craft and the appearance of 3 beings on the 3rd night kept the base jumping, became certainly the best known and best documented UFO incident in the history of Great Britain.
All right, let me stop you right there, because what I want to do is I want to read Larry Warren's account from your book. I'm going to read a couple of passages here that talks about what he saw when he approached this glowing fog in the woods, himself and dozens of other military personnel, cameras rolling. This is not just one person seeing something. This is dozens of military personnel. I'm reading from the book here, Left at Eastgate. The radios were active. I could hear what sounded like pilot communications. Someone repeated over the air, "Here it comes, here it comes, here it comes." Over the far end of the field from the direction of the North Sea, I noticed a small red light. The light came closer each second. At first I thought it was an aircraft, but it came at us too fast and silently. At first, I noticed at this time that my movements had become very slow, as if I were in a vacuum. This was the last time I checked my watch. It was almost 1:30 a.m. My arm felt like lead as I lifted and dropped it. The red light cleared the pines bordering the field and quickly made a downward arc until it was directly over the illuminated fog. Only about 20 feet above the ground, the object was now stationary and roughly the size of a basketball. I had never seen its color before, but red comes closest. As my mind tried to register what I was looking at, the ball of light exploded in a blinding flash. Shards of light and particles fell onto the fog. The explosion produced no noticeable heat, but now right in front of me was a machine occupying the spot where the fog had been. It was big and almost the shape of a pyramid. At the top of the object was the same off-red glow. The main body was pearl white with a rainbow color effect. Its image was constantly distorting. Its shape was best seen by peripheral vision. At the base was a bank of extremely bright cobalt blue lights. Below that, I thought I could make out what looked like a dark landing gear, covering the entire surface were what looked like boxes, pipes, and strange extensions. So this is a military man who's seen something that he didn't recognize at all.
Correct.
Now, what happens after this?
The security police of the contingent and other Air Force personnel who were brought out to this farmer's field about 5 miles from RAF Bentwaters, but only about a mile from their sister base, RAF Woodbridge, had been ordered to surround the ground fog previously that this machine appeared in. Some men got very frightened when this machine appeared, ran off. Almost all of them held their ground. These are highly trained military specialists, and essentially held their positions. At a certain point, as time advanced, Larry and the man next to him, Sergeant Adrian Bustinza, noticed a glow on the far side of the craft that was moving slowly around the perimeter. At a certain point, the glow was fully within their vision, and the glow began to recede, and they both observed 3 beings. Not your archetypical grays, stockier, about 4 feet tall, seemingly in one-piece garments, semi-translucent, and just to add a note of problematic reality, floating about a foot off the ground. Essentially a peaceful standoff continued and went well into the night. Men were slowly taken off the spot. And at a certain point, the beings, they didn't go in a door, but they went back in. The machine then took off and was gone in a flash.
All right. Andy in the back, if you could bring up the map, one of the first images. I just want to show people where we're talking about in England. This was, you can see the blue dot is where we're talking about. And then also, Andy, if you could bring up the image 2. This is the newspaper clip that came out the next day. Meteor is the cause of these bright lights. Now, of course, meteors don't have triangular shapes with cobalt blue light, and they don't hang around for hours, and they don't get filmed, and all these other things. But that was the official report, right? The meteor.
It was one of them, and the fact was that after checking with the Royal Observatory, I was able to confirm that there was a meteor shower over Suffolk, East Anglia that evening. And had you been standing in Capel Green, the farmer's field where this occurred, and been looking in just the right direction, you would have seen them pass by in a matter of seconds, and that was that. It's a nonsensical rationale, but that was what was first put forward.
So, first of all, why the cover-up? Why such an effort to cover this event up once it occurred?
Oh, I think it's endemic to the subject, Jeff. We're dealing with something that we don't understand, that we have no power over. You're dealing with military mindsets, somewhat rigid egos, and these things have run rings around us since 1947. We may be covering up what we don't know and hiding our ignorance as much as information that we have been able to deduce over the decades.
Now, what's interesting is that you've got tensions in the world, military tensions, in sort of near that region, but there were nuclear weapons on this base, correct?
That's correct, Jeff, and that was in full violation of our treaty at the time with Her Majesty's government. I don't have a military background, but my years in this work have given me a crash course in certain aspects of military technology. Something like 350,000 kilotons of nuclear ordnance was held in underground bunkers in this area. To give you a sense of what that means, a 1 kiloton nuclear device, if detonated, sets up a circle with a 10-mile radius where everything is dead or dying, and that middle mile equivalent to the bullseye on a target is pretty much glass.
Sure.
So it was a double. That would have been a public relations nightmare to start with, and again, based on the fact that literally every NATO base in the United Kingdom and in Europe was on a full red alert at the time because of this potential for conflict with the Soviet Union. Red is one step below black, and black is war.
Right.
For any of these viewers who are interested in looking into this for themselves, simply go to any major American newspaper for the last week in December. It was the international story.
No doubt. And so you've got nuclear weapons, you've got military personnel on edge, of course, and you've got something unidentified in the vicinity of nuclear weapons. It's a problem. It's a big problem.
It's a big problem.
Right. Now, here's the question, and you started to touch on this, whether we cover this up because of what we don't know or what we do know. If you were in charge of the universe, and I have no reason to believe you're not, I'll let that hang in the air a little longer until it gets awkward. Would you let that out? Would you tell people? Would you say, hey, yeah, we don't know where they're from, we don't know what we can do about it, but they're here? I mean, would you release that to the world?
Well, that's a great question. I don't know. I might be very selective in releasing certain information. When I began in this field 30 years ago, I was pretty much a zealot, and, the people have a right to know and release everything we have. And now I hesitate to be that sweeping in my thinking. The potential for mass panic among certain parts of the population, the wild card of how fundamentalists, whatever their religion, might react to the conflict they perceive that this technological and advanced presence might raise is another thing.
Right.
So there's a lot of things to consider before simply opening the vault and letting the information out.
Right, so you might tell me, but you'd not tell Matt Moniz.
I'd never tell Matt.
Right, okay. No, that's fair, and I understand. Okay, so back in just this past year, 2009, the British government released an awful lot of UFO documents, correct?
Yeah, over the previous few years, Her Majesty's Ministry of Defense staged the release of exactly that, several thousand previously classified documents relating to the subject of UFOs. As expected, there was a lot of interesting reading. There was no smoking gun, but there was some pretty intriguing smoke. Quite a few of these documents related to the Rendlesham Forest incident, and what they told us more than anything was that although Her Majesty's government denied that they were interested in it, in fact, they were.
Right. Well, of course. I mean, geez, you've got so many witnesses. But very good. Well, Peter, hang with us here for a second. We have to take a very odd break.
And now, an odd fact with Matthew Moniz.
No piece of dry paper can be folded more than 7 times. Isn't that odd?
This has been an odd fact with Matthew Moniz.
6, 7, 8, 9. Take that, Moniz. I'm just kidding. I couldn't get past 7. All right, very good. Peter, we do have questions for you in the chat room. I haven't been able to jump to them earlier. I apologize. Sarah, please tell us. What do people want to know?
Yes, Pete. Actually, they want to know if you personally think that the U.S. government will eventually release all of the top secret UFO info they have.
Did you catch that?
Yes, I did, and no, I don't think they'll ever release everything. I think that they are committed to keeping a lid on this, although a lot of my colleagues would disagree. And I think one way or the other, it will work its way into the public domain with the passage of time. There's a core of us, obviously, that take the subject seriously, that do our homework, that read the books and research the matter, and we impact on a small percentage of the population. We'll see how it shakes down. But the short answer is no. I don't think they're ever going to release everything, and certainly not willingly.
Right. Well, I mean, that's fair enough. And as we said before, it might even be irresponsible to do so. But so tell me, and I'm sorry I didn't ask this earlier, how do you get involved with this story? At what point do you come into it?
I met my co-author, Larry Warren, briefly after he went public in 1984. I think he went public in 83. But it was literally a hello, wow, that's interesting. But 4 years later, he was a speaker and I was a panelist at a conference in Washington, D.C. We met. He had decided he wanted to write a book. He was looking for a co-author, invited me to do it. I was looking for a book-length project at the time and agreed, having absolutely no idea of what I was getting myself into or the amount of time, energy, and anxiety that would result in it.
Right. And so, and since then, this has really become a passion for you. I mean, one of the things that I think is so interesting about this book is, especially because I've got the updated edition, you include a lot of the letters that you've received from other witnesses, other people who were there that night who said, I remember that. I remember you, Larry Warren, being there. I remember, seeing what you saw. That's a lot of validation. And as you said, boy, when you've got one person coming forward, well, maybe one person's crazy, but 2 and 3 and 4 and 6 and 8, I mean, at what point do you say, someone here is not lying?
I think for many people, they say that at the level that their anxiety can tolerate rather than the preponderance of evidence. When at a certain point, I had to begin to trust Larry and respect what he was saying after pummeling him with questions, getting the answers that I was looking for, being able to confirm them, getting other answers I wasn't looking for. But as we continued on the project and I realized we were going to be naming names and alleging certain things that they had told Larry that he was aware of, I was concerned there might be some blowback after the book was published. Only one of them would have needed to go to our publisher and say, this is not accurate, or you didn't have permission to use my alleged account, or you'll be hearing from my attorneys. I'm relieved and very proud to say that absolutely every one of those men that we talk about in the book who contacted us, at the least begrudgingly, confirmed their involvement in the accuracy of the way it was portrayed, and at most had tremendous praise for Larry's courage, and I'm glad to say for the accuracy of my research.
Now, have you had any fallout? This book's been out over a decade now. I mean, have you had any fallout, or Larry, for that matter, for coming forward with this?
The fallout that I had was in the course of working on the book, where I went through a rather paranoid period, which I think was warranted in retrospect. My mail was being opened. I had tests run on my phone lines. I was being monitored irregularly.
I'm sorry about that. I just find you very interesting.
Well, who wouldn't?
Right, of course.
The fact is that after the book came out, in great part because we withheld nothing, they left us alone. The book went on to become a real bestseller in the United Kingdom. We did a 15-city speaking tour, and it changed the way people think about it there, from everybody from the Prime Minister to members of Parliament, members of the Ministry of Defense, on down to the general public.
Right. One of the things I appreciate as a fellow author is that you were so meticulous that this isn't just a legend story. This isn't just like, well, somebody saw something and they can't explain it. The documentation, the many pages of military documents that you pour through, it's just so thorough. And I think that's, and I appreciate that as a writer and someone who also looks into strange things for a living. I just think that's so wonderful because, boy, what can people say? They don't have to believe it. They can say it's all made up or lies, but boy, that's a heck of an effort.
Well, thank you, Jeff. That means a lot to me. The fact is, when you are trying to tell a story about a subject that the world finds so controversial, it's incumbent on you to be as thorough as you can. And kind of the curse of the book, I thought it would take a year or two, it took 9 years, was also a blessing in disguise, because whether I liked it or not, it gave me the chance to win the trust of witnesses, some of whom took years, and to follow the paper trail to develop physical evidence. And Matt, who may look like a headbanging heavy metal guy, and is also a distinguished scientist. And it was how we met. Matt did the analysis on the affected soil in the landing site, and some of his findings, for me, were some of the most compelling evidence included in the book.
Right, and actually, let's get to Matt if we could. Matt was kind enough. I know you'll have to take my word for it. I've got one of those soil samples right here. Matt brought it in. Matt, what can you tell us about what you found from this soil sample? And I'm sorry, Peter, one more thing. This was taken, what, 10 years after the fact?
Correct.
10 years after the fact from the landing site. Matt, what did you find in the soil sample?
A number of interesting effects. One being the soil is what is known as hydrophobic. In other words, if you add water to it, it just rolls off. Whereas in control soil, you add water to it, you got mud. This stuff, if you add water to it, some of it will float, some of it will just sink to the bottom. It's not miscible. It doesn't mix. It also contains a high degree of FeO, or ferric oxide, which is otherwise known as meteorite dust, which is found all over the planet. But with this particular case, this material was brought together and infused in a silicate substrate. In other words, what happened, there was a high electromagnetic field applied to this soil to draw all this magnetic iron there, and a high degree of heat and energy, which turned the soil into an interim glass, infusing this FeO into it. Under electron microscope, you can see that the sand or material that it is rounded. It's smooth, as opposed to control soil, which is very jagged. It is also devoid of microbial life. Most soil contains various forms of microbes, and even 10 years after, the soil was still somewhat sterile.
That's amazing. And Andy, in the back, if you could bring up the fifth image, we're going to actually see the site as it looked 10 years after the fact. There it is. That's the site. And yeah, I mean, so amazing stuff. And for all of you oddball fans out there, you thought we were just a bunch of goofballs who didn't know anything, huh? How about that, Matt Moniz? Huh? Round of applause. We've got real scientists here, people. Damn it, don't argue with us.
He's also good at barbecue.
He is. He's a good barbecuer, too. That's good. So, I mean, what a wild show. Do I have alien, well, not alien soil, but soil affected by aliens right here in my hands. Amazing stuff. So, Peter, did we reach any conclusions, Peter? I mean, what this could have been?
Well, I have.
Okay.
Namely that we were dealing with an anomalous presence of another intelligence, extremely high technology. Where it originated, I have no idea. Another planet, another time, another dimension. It's almost a moot point. For me, it underscored that we are not alone and that very powerful elements within our governments move heaven and earth to continue to try to convince we the people that the subject is nonsensical, and they've done a very good job of it over the decades.
Right. Well, you know, when people like you go on esteemed shows like ours, I mean, it's a matter of time before we break all those walls down, isn't it? Let's face it.
I guess so.
From 30-odd minutes to the world. I do appreciate you being here. I'm only joking, of course. We do have another question for you. I want to give folks in the chat room a chance. Rob, what are they asking?
It's not really related to the incident we were talking about tonight. It's just a general question about if a spaceship doesn't want to be seen, why do they have lights? And why do people see all these lights?
Yeah, why the lights in the sky if you're trying to be stealthy? I know when I visit other planets, I turn the lights off.
Well, number one, we don't know that it was a spaceship, and number two, we don't know that they didn't want to be seen.
Fair enough. That's a good point. Take that, question asker in the chat room. Man, he's good. Oh, what? No, absolutely. All right, so are you getting more information now? I mean, are you still, is information still coming forward on this case?
Surprisingly, yes. And I think we're going to be seeing more, and that's not just in the research community, but I think some of it's going to bleed into the general media as we move more into this year. The fact is, this coming December is the 30th anniversary of this event.
Right.
And a number of the men who were involved are now discreetly networking with each other. I'm hopeful that it will result in an event in England later this year where many of them come together again for the first time since that night. And if we're lucky, some of them may then be willing to go forward into some kind of public forum. I'm hoping that 2011, we will see a number of these men together on a stage somewhere in this country discussing this with an audience among themselves, and hopefully we will learn all the more from some of their accounts and their courage to come forward.
Right. Well, you know, you and I have talked in the past about the power of legends and lore, and there was an article that made the news in September of 2009. Someone came forward claiming that what everyone saw that night in 1980 was actually a truck full of stolen manure that was on fire. Do you buy into that, or is it just BS? Come on. I wrote that all day.
You stopped me flat on that one.
Man, come on.
Basically, I had to leave the field because it's been disproven, and yeah, I guess it was a truck full of burning manure.
Right. Well, that's a downer of an ending here tonight, but
it is really. Yeah, I'm not happy about it.
No, man. No, but it's funny how people want to make themselves a part of the story, even if coming forward with no proof, nothing other than, yeah, I lit a truck. You know, this stolen truck of manure is on fire. Really, in the news. I mean, this is what comes out sometimes.
Well, you know, let's face it, the news is more and more tabloid reality nonsense, and it's a way to have your not even 15 minutes, 15 seconds of something approaching fame. No, most of these excuses and rationales are, if they weren't so insulting, you know, they'd just be silly, but they really are nonsense.
Yeah. No, well, that's the nature of what we deal with all the time when we're doing these kinds of things. But Peter, that's all the time we have. It goes so fast. I really do appreciate you sharing this important case, really called, you know, considered the Roswell of England. And we know why, because look at all these pages, quite frankly. Great book, fantastic job, meticulous research. Again, it's Left at Eastgate, a first-hand account of the Rendlesham Forest UFO Incident, its cover-up and investigation by Larry Warren and our good friend Peter Robbins, who's here with us tonight. Peter, thank you so much, and we look forward to having a great year with you and finding out more and more about this subject. So thank you.
I was glad to be on the show, Jeff, and send that $5 to me in cash.
You got it.